Who was the creepiest person you've ever seen or met? I was at the public library about 4 years ago doing schoolwork and a man came up and sat down at my table, staring at me. After easily 10 minutes, he asked me why I was wearing gold headphones, cheap but fun gold-colored headphones, and then informed me that the royals back in medieval times used to make the peasants dig for gold because they were actually supernatural entities who ate it. By this point I'm shooting, help me, eyes at the librarians, who all ignore me. He talks for a bit longer and then pulls out a mask, like something you would wear on Halloween, and puts it on. Sits there, staring at me. Library security officer finally kicks him out because he refused to take the mask off. I leave the library easily 2 hours later and he's outside, waiting. He follows me about a block before I pull out my phone and threaten to call the police on him. He calls me a bitch and walks away. Used to be close friends with a guy who molested my other close friend. He also tried to start a cult by bringing us to Jesus through him. There is this dude from my town. He talked to me and we became really close. He asked me to be his girlfriend and I didn't accept it, but I didn't rejected him either. I told him I was going to think about it and it was difficult for me because of my anxiety and my time management. He stopped talking to me, even blocked me of social media. One night I felt I was getting chased on the street, so I walked faster to a crowded place and looked behind me and he was there trying to hide through the people. He's been talking to me and sending me messages since then, even telling me things like, I saw you yesterday with your father at X place, you look so beautiful with that clothes you had yesterday, I love when you use red lipstick, and it creeps me out. I met Tom Cruise at a fancy restaurant in Los Angeles. I was working on their POS and he came in the back and wanted to meet the staff. He did this weird assembly line thing where he gave 9 seconds worth of name repetition and eye contact to everybody. It was like meeting an animatronic puppet being operated by an alien that just arrived on Earth. What do you do here? That's important. I'm happy to have met you. He seemed to already know who I was, even though there's no way for him to have known I was going to be there. He did this song and dance with everybody in the back of house. The weird part was that he seemed to know everybody. He does this thing where he makes a joke then stands next to you and laughs as if somebody else told it to the both of you. I hope somebody else here has met him because this can't be an isolated incident. Edit. I want to reiterate that it was totally weird and not at all like it was meeting Ben Stiller, who was perfectly pleasant and clearly human. Guy the first was in the military with killed his girlfriend and 2 children by drowning them. I transported a cannibal once when I was an extradition officer. He said he wanted to eat me, so I bought him a pepperoni pizza and told him he could pretend it's me. Moved a carousel horse to the attic of Robert Burdella in KC with a buddy of mine. We had just graduated high school, so we're around 18. He was big into antiques and such and routinely traded, bought, and sold with my friend's mother, who was exclusively into carousel animals from early periods. Probably only thing that saved us is she had called him that day to arrange the delivery so he would not have had an alibi. Guy at my high school acted like a total creep. Tried putting his hands on girls, claimed to have a snake tattooed on his dick. Lo and behold, less than a year after he graduates, he's arrested for exposing himself to a fucking toddler at the library. I met this guy, and we hit it off. We went for coffee, seemed normal, so NEHXT date I agreed to meet him at his place and watch a movie, as long as he agreed to give me a ride home, since buses would not be running after the movie. No problem, he says. Well, I showed up and he is already half drunk. There goes my ride home. We start the movie and he is trying to get me to drink, which I decline. He then goes into his bedroom and comes back with his half-hard dick out and starts telling me to say hi to Mr. Peepee. And that Mr. Peepee wants a kiss. I left and got my own taxi home. Old baseball coach had a very pedo vibe to him. The way he interacted with the players. My dad kept saying he does stuff to kids. Turned out he would sext and molest certain players. It started to come out after several players killed themselves. Years ago I worked retail. A coworker's boyfriend came in and he was just off. He was an ex-felon who had done time for aggravated assault, but coworker kept saying how he was reformed and such a great guy now. Fast forward about 4 years and my old manager calls me. Remember coworker? Well, she got into it with the guy. He hit her. Her 15-year-old daughter tried to stop it. He raped the daughter, killed them both, then went on the run from the cops. One of the most horrible stories I've ever heard. I was around 15 to 16 years old. I was holding my toddler nephew at my grandmother's Christmas party and my creep-ass uncle said, "I guess, name of nephew, can't decide which one of your pillows he wants to lay on." I told him to go fuck himself. I told my mom later what happened and she flipped and asked if he did anything or said anything else. Turns out he had raped my mom when they were kids. Pretty fucked up. My grandmother still doesn't acknowledge it happened even when my mom asked her to before she died 3 years ago. People fucking suck. One of my old coworkers. For some reason she became infatuated with me, which would be fine if she wasn't super fucking creepy about it. She would run up to me and try to hug me every single day, despite me telling her not to. She took every possible chance to, accidentally, brush up against me, and she would even leave love letters for me around the lab. Most of these letters contained some form of, "You are my sunshine," or, "I would die without you." And she never showered. She was pretty overweight, so her BO tended to gather up under her boobs, which she loved to, accidentally, shove in my face or put on my shoulder whenever I was sitting down. I reported her many, many times, but her mom was the head of HR so those complaints tended to get lost. Eventually she transferred out after I became a supervisor and told her she needed to act more appropriately in the workplace. And I got written up by HR for being too aggressive, obviously. I used to work in the mental health field. One of my clients was a necrophiliac, someone who likes to get down with corpses. He was a middle-aged, morbidly obese man who always wore the same pair of white overalls and a straw hat. He insisted on being called Farmer Ted, and his name wasn't even Ted. Definitely the nastiest, creepiest guy you could ever meet, and no, I'm not making this up. There was a girl I met in college and when she introduced herself to my friends and I got the shiver down my spine feeling, just thinking, something's off. Fast forward few months, I'm eating dinner with one of my friends and she joins us. She starts to share her Harry Potter fan fiction with us, and tells us that she made herself 13 in a relationship with Snape. That really unsettled me. One of my friends caught her going through other people's laundry and sniffing it. I think she ended up getting suspended or expelled because she was killing rats and storing them in her backpack and textbooks and was pulling them out in lecture and playing with them. Sometimes it's important to trust your initial instinct and I'm so happy I listened to my instincts. Guy the first played hockey with. Turned out to be a pedophile. Can't say I knew it beforehand, but he was definitely creepy and gave off a bad vibe. I was out early doing my morning walk and I saw this guy appear out of the bushes. At first I just thought that he may be a gardener or something and I was just seeing it from a weird angle. I kept walking, but took out one headphone so I could hear. I made a turn down my street and casually glanced over my shoulder to see where he was, which was crossing the street over to my side. He started picking up the pace and I thought about running, but for some reason I turned all the way around so I was facing him and firmly yelled, "Can I help you?" We both stood there staring at each other. I basically told myself subconsciously not to back down, so I took a step towards him. He turned around and walked back across the street. I don't know what came over me. I was just like, "Fuck you, I'm not scared," even though I was, and it worked. 1. The guy who cornered me against a pier one night, I was between him and the water, and explained that he was a part of a militant Irish resistant group and used violence to get what he wanted. 2. The foreign exchange student in college who played dumb all the time but was absolutely obsessed with my one friend and booked back-to-back hour-long tutors sessions with her so he could get her alone. This guy that used to work night shift at a gas station near my house. He had this creepy serial killer vibe. He would stare with these wide eyes and toothy smile when people walked in and would make it a point to ask about people's families. He drove an old Nissan hatchback type car that had a broken back window, no rear bumper and had trash bags for seat covers. I looked into it one night and there was a shovel in the back. I stopped going in there when he was there. He looked kinda like David Koresh but a lot creepier. I asked about him after not seeing him for a few months and the cashier asked me to please not mention him again. There was a guy in the training program that I went through for the military that kept a journal where he wrote about how he manipulates everyone in the class to do his will. He fell asleep constantly and eventually got kicked out for shitty grades. A few months later, a woman comes to interview me because he listed me as a character witness for a clearance he'd applied for. I was honest with her that he creeped the shit out of me. Never heard about him again, but I'm worried that I'm on his lipstick list. My high school history teacher had an office attached to his room. One day I asked him about extra credit and he said, "We can go in the back room and talk about extra credit." I tried to laugh it off, but it felt like a creepy proposition. About 2 months later, a substitute teacher took over. It turns out the history teacher was paying students to go to an out-of-state casino with him. He would get a hotel room, and pay them extra if they let him give them a blowjob. He was arrested. Okay, I have 2 stories, both involve me working. 1. I was at work and the really shifty person came in. He looked like if someone dipped a weasel in some fry grease then dried him with a towel. At this time I was taking orders from customers up front. At the time of taking his order he seemed really normal, so I silently scolded myself for judging people. As I was handing him order he leaned in really close and said, "I would love to see you naked and tied up." I went home early that day too. I was working drive-through, collecting payment from the customers while simultaneously taking orders. After I had finished giving this guy his change and was driving away, he said that he liked the way my voice sounded over the intercom and it gave him a boner. This actually has an update as of today. Found out last year that a drummer I'd worked with back in 2011 was on trial after a bunch of people came forward saying he raped or sexually assaulted them as minors when he was a youth pastor. He was over 18 at the time. Most of the kids were 13 or under, I believe. There were 5 total accusations I know of. Today, he got sentenced to 18 months in prison. To me, it's fucking bullshit. In my state, he was looking at a max of 8.5 years and about $16,000 in fines. He got off way too easy. One of my childhood friends ended up in life for prison for murder. He's not nearly as creepy as the guy in the story emo. The attendant at the local ice house my family and I would skate at. One day I had to use the restroom badly and couldn't hold it. I asked the guy if it was okay since it was the off hours and he said it was fine. After I came out I noticed just how empty the place was. As I was walking away I realized he was looking at me strangely and commented, "You have really nice legs." I was 9. When I was 18 I was walking home from my waitress job at 1 a.m. and listening to music on headphones. Dumb move. A roughly 30-year-old jittery guy ran up behind me and grabbed my arm. I didn't even know anyone was around. He kept asking if I was 14 and I was too confused by the question and situation to respond. Thankfully we were by a busy-ish road, so I pulled my arm away and stepped out into the street and began waving my arms, and he ran away. The remaining 30 blocks were more of a silent jog. And that's the last time I walked home from that job. Actually, that is far from the creepiest. I can think of at least 10 more stories like that or worse. What is wrong with people? This happened a few months back when I was at the train station, trying to get a ticket or whatever. This dude comes up to me, probably in his late 20s or early 30s, and asked what was I doing here. I said that I wanted to get a ticket. He then asked me which school am I from, and so I told him. He also asked me about COVID and all. Starting getting creepy vibes till he touched my hair. That moment I started thinking that he was mentally ill. We then said farewell and parted ways. Weirdest dude encounter in my life, so far. I am only 15 and a dude. Few years ago, I was in a new city for some official work. The first night, I was just walking on the road, roaming around after the city slept. So I was walking up in this empty road and I saw a girl walking towards a bus stand in opposite direction. Dark empty road with minimal street light, just enough to see whether the person is girl or boy. 2 dudes, following her. She stopped at the bus stop. These guys just looking at her and following her. As I came close by, she was looking at me once and at them. Everything normal and the guys standing just a few meters away. I saw her and she looked at me with these big tears eyes. I stood there scared shitless that what those guys may do, but I made it a point to stay there with her. They made some calls. Just then a city bus came and she boarded it. The guys also start walking towards the bus, so I start walking straight towards them, fast and with angry face. They stopped there while the bus left. The girl just mouthed "thank you" from the bus window. I started walking away again towards my hotel. Guys followed me for one street but then left, I suppose. Once I was working and the coworker that was there that day was on lunch, so I was completely alone. It was a small business. A creepy dude came in and basically cornered me, getting inches from me, talking about how hot I was, how he wanted to hook up, etc. I nervously told him I had a boyfriend and to please not talk to me like that. He did the generic, "well, he doesn't have to know" response. Eventually, I was able to get behind the counter and he stopped following me and left. About a week later, I was walking home from work because I didn't have a car at the time, and there he was. He spots me and tries to follow me home. Scared the fuck out of me. Called my boyfriend at the time and he quickly came to pick me up and yelled at the dude. I ended up seeing his mugshot online, looked up his criminal record, and he had a whole load of harassment, domestic abuse and a couple rape charges. A senior, when I was a freshman, had a huge crush on me. I didn't mind it at first cause he was pretty chill and just a casual dude I could talk to, plus I didn't think of him as a threat since my brother was a senior at our high school and the kid was around my height, 5'1". All of a sudden he started getting really clingy and attached and texted me non-stop, even when I didn't answer. It got to the point he was leaving love notes and gifts in my locker and at my address, which I had mistakenly given to him back when we were friends planning to hang out at some point. I'd wake up to these signs of affection at my doorstep and at my locker. His first class was next to mine, so he'd always try to block me in the hall and talk to me. It got to the point where he had memorized my schedule and I had to take a different way to my classes each day and pray he didn't guess which route I was gonna take. My family took notice on it and my brother got the kid ostracized from everyone. Not that he wasn't already an outcast of sorts, but was seen as more of a harmless character. My older brother also threatened the kid and said if he ever tried to get close to me again he wouldn't hesitate to stab the kid. This is all especially troubling cause I was 14 at the time and the creepy guy was already 19. Some random guy who approached me one morning and asked me out. He gave me major creepy vibes. I'd seen him hanging around outside my building for a while and this was the first time he'd spoken to me. Not long after, I woke up to an intruder in my bedroom. I can't be certain it was the same man, because it was too dark to see the intruder's face clearly enough, but there was enough similarity that it was definitely possible that it was the same guy, and the guy who'd been hanging around disappeared after the break-in, never saw him again. Prior to that I'd seen him often enough that I thought he'd moved into one of the buildings along that stretch of the road. The fact that he then disappeared was suspicious. Thanks for watching. See you later.